That brings us to the end of our ninth hearing block here in Perth. This hearing block has examined key issues of leadership and organisational culture within the ADF, accountability, and timely action to learn from the past. The evidence presented during this hearing again raises serious questions as to whether leadership within Defence has been taking adequate and timely action in relation to responding to the very real and pressing issues of suicide and suicidality within its ranks. There has been a disturbing number of suicide-related incidents involving our current sailors, soldiers, and aviators. These figures are not available on the public record at this time, but I must stress that the magnitude of the problem must not be underestimated. We've received evidence of a study that analysed 59 reports into 57 deaths by suicide between June 2016 and June 2020, as Counsel Assisting outlined. This study does not represent all deaths during that period, only the reports received during that time. We've heard that the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force has taken, on average, more than 600 days to release individual inquiry reports into each of these 57 deaths by suicide. The study I mentioned was a non-technical analysis of these reports, but it would seem from the evidence we've uncovered during this hearing that there is inadequate systemic analysis of suicide deaths or suicide behaviours by Defence to inform meaningful action to ensure the mental health and well-being of its people. We note the Chief of Defence Force has appointed a brigadier or one-star officer to head up a new mental health and well-being branch. However, it appears that senior officer charged with looking at mental health and suicide prevention within Defence at this time has clearly not been provided all the necessary information, staff or resources to respond to these issues at an organisational level. In fact, 7 months on, the Mental Health and Wellbeing branch has only a handful of staff, and it is not clear what has been achieved practically to combat suicide or promote wellbeing. To quote Brigadier Langford, they are building the plane as they're flying it. There is evidence that there will be no mature, fully resourced and functioning branch until at least January 2025. We note Defence was able to stand up a very well-resourced task force led by a 2-star officer to assist this Royal Commission in a very quick manner. Yet Defence's approach to investigating and reporting on suicides has progressed at snail's pace, and we are yet to find sufficient evidence of urgency in responding to these complex issues holistically, even with this Royal Commission sitting. A question must arise: how seriously is Defence taking these issues at an organisational level? Defence is a large, complex and geographically dispersed organisation with 3 service arms and a large bureaucratic arm, whose command structures are challenging for some to understand, even for those members serving in them. And it's important that we acknowledge that there are some very good people in leadership positions across the services who obviously care deeply about the well-being of their people and are doing their best. We hope that this is the rule and not the exception. But the Chief of Defence Force and senior leaders must have a sense of urgency on these matters. Programs and appropriate governance need to be in place to make sure the well-being of serving members is of paramount consideration. All leaders within Defence must be driven to make use of all information available to them, to be more curious, given the autonomy to think outside the box when it comes to identifying risk factors for suicide and suicidality and opportunities for early intervention, and then held accountable for the outcomes. Over the past 2 weeks, we've again uncovered issues of culture and incident reporting across the services, as well as command responses to unacceptable behaviour, such as bullying, harassment, and misogyny. We've heard contemporary examples of our servicemen and women doing it tough, including increased pressures on our sailors and submariners at HMAS Stirling, caused by the hollowness of the Navy's workforce, leading to a recurring cycle of burnout, which is placing further strain on their mental health. There was the tragic loss of 3 clearance divers to suicide in the space of 2 years, and we heard that the Navy Divers Trust efforts to bring critical issues to the attention of Navy was seemingly to no avail. From the evidence we have heard, it is clear that leaders at all levels of the defence hierarchy need to be more responsible and accountable for their actions or lack thereof. We feel strongly that measuring performance for accountability and transparency are essential. As mentioned by Council Assisting earlier in a closed session, we examined issues pertaining to the Special Air Service Regiment based at Campbell Barracks here in Perth. The evidence provided a valuable insight into matters of relevance to the work of the Royal Commission insofar as they relate to this special unit within the ADF. Our inquiries are far from over. There's an enormous amount of work still to be done as we work towards our final report. The issues under investigation are complex, multi-layered, and many. In line with our terms of reference, we will visit the United States, one of Australia's key Five Eyes partners, next month to examine how they've responded to similar issues in their military community and how they support their serving and ex-serving personnel. This follows previous meetings with government and defence officials in the UK, Canada and New Zealand. We'll continue to hold private sessions with people with lived experience to learn from their deeply personal experiences. We've held about 470 private sessions to date, with hundreds more to be conducted for those who have already applied throughout 2023 and early 2024. We will continue to meet face-to-face with our servicemen and women as we visit defence bases around the country to hear about their experiences of life in the military. We're committed to working collaboratively with experts and key stakeholder groups, particularly as we look to recommend practical and long-lasting solutions to any cultural and systemic issues impacting our serving and ex-serving ADF members. We will also continue to accept submissions from individuals and groups through until the 13th of October this year. And there will be further public hearings, including those already announced for Adelaide and Melbourne. Hearing Block 10 in Adelaide will commence on the 17th of July, and we anticipate hearing evidence in relation to postings, promotions and career management, families, family advocates and the role of defence member family support, the progress being made on claims management at the Department of Veteran Affairs, as well as some expert evidence in relation to leadership, change management and burnout. That will be followed by hearing Block 11 in Melbourne from the 28th of August. As I stated in my opening remarks, that Australia's defence capability, first and foremost, comes from the brave men and women who pull on the uniform of our Navy, Army and Air Force and go to work each day to protect us. Each and every one of us has a duty to ensure defence protects them. We Commissioners and our entire staff reiterate our commitment to completing the most thorough inquiry possible, reaching recommendations that prescribe the best possible solutions, and making findings that are both fully justified by the evidence and persuasive enough to induce action, instead of the inertia demonstrated by previous governments and Commonwealth bodies. We remain determined to succeed in our task. The risk is far too great for us not to. Thank you, and safe travels for those who are travelling. If there's no other issues, we'll adjourn now.
All rise. The Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide is adjourned to Monday, 17 July 2023.